Hello. I never thought I'd be talking to people on the internet about my personal life. But sometimes life throws you a curveball. My wife, Jessica, and I have been together for 8 years and married for 5. We met in college, and she was everything to me. Beautiful, smart, and funny. Our relationship was great at first. We were always together, doing the same things. We got married, bought a house, and even talked about having kids. I thought we were solid. We had our ups and downs, like any couple, but nothing I'd ever thought was out of the ordinary. But about a year ago, things started to change. At first, it was small things like Jessica being more distant and spending more time on her phone. She also laughed at texts she didn't want to share with me. She started going out more, using vague excuses about work meetings or catching up with old friends I'd never heard of. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just stressed or needed some space. After all, we'd been together for so long. Maybe it was just a phase, but I had this nagging feeling, like there was something wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. That I wanted to think it was just me, that I was overthinking. But I knew something was wrong. As time went on, I felt more and more suspicious, and I couldn't ignore it. She started coming home late, claiming she had to stay at the office for work, but it felt wrong. The explanations were vague, and when I asked for details, she'd get defensive or change the subject. One night she came home later than usual, smelling like a mixture of expensive perfume and cologne, neither of which I own. I asked her about it, trying not to get upset, and she just laughed and said that her coworker had spilled some on her during a lunch meeting. She brushed it off like it was nothing.
This is your story channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please join us to stay updated with more real stories happening around you.
She brushed it off like it was nothing, but the laugh didn't reach her eyes. It felt forced, like she was trying to convince herself as much as I was. Then there was the matter of her phone. Jessica used to be pretty open about her messaging and social media. Nothing was off limits. But now her phone was always with her, and she never left it unattended. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she would quickly turn off the screen or flip the phone over, pretending she wasn't doing anything. I tried not to jump to conclusions, but the secrecy was eating away at me. Every time I saw her smile at a message, every time she dodged a question about her day, it felt like another piece of our relationship was crumbling. I felt like I was losing her, like she was slipping away. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to know if I was right to be suspicious or if I was just being paranoid, so I started looking more closely for any clues that would prove I was right. That I had no idea that I was about to find something that would shatter my world. One day, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling any longer. Jessica had left for another work meeting, and I was alone in the house, pacing like a caged animal. That I decided I needed answers, no matter how ugly they might be, so I did something I never thought I would do. I went through her cell phone. She had left it in the kitchen to charge, something she hadn't done in months. My hands shook as I unlocked it. I found hundreds of messages between her and a guy named Matt. At first, they were just about work and joking around, but as I scrolled up, the messages became more personal. They talked about things they'd done together and places they'd been. There were pictures of the two of them in restaurants, hotel rooms, and even in our own home. I felt my stomach sink. Jessica had been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back, bringing this guy into our home and into our bed. But that wasn't the worst of it. As I scrolled down, I saw conversations about the money they were spending, expensive dinners, weekend getaways, and shopping sprees paid for with our joint account. That I couldn't believe it. She was cheating on me and using my money to pay for it. That I felt sick and betrayed. That I didn't know what to do. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling like my whole world had just been pulled out from under me. That I had suspected something was wrong. But seeing the proof in front of me was like a punch in the gut from which I couldn't recover. After sitting there frozen in shock, I knew I couldn't just let this go. That I had to confront Jessica, and I had to do it right away. I didn't want her to come home with more lies and excuses. My hands were shaking. From anger and adrenaline, that I called her, trying to stay calm. She said she'd be home in an hour. She didn't know I knew everything. When she walked through the door, she gave me that fake smile she'd been using. I couldn't keep pretending. I stood in the living room, phone in hand, waiting for her to notice my expression. When she did, her smile faded. She asked, "What's wrong?" in a concerned voice, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She knew that I said, "Who the hell is Matt?" in a low but firm voice. Her face went pale. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there like a deer. I said, "Cotton headlights." I don't know what you're talking about. She finally stammered, but it was too late that I held up her phone and showed her the messages. The dam broke. She started making excuses, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that they were just friends, that I was overreacting. But the proof was right there in front of her. I pointed to the messages about the money, the trips, the gifts. How do you explain this? I demanded, my voice rising. That's when she changed tactics, going from denial to anger. You went through my phone. How could you do that? It's a complete invasion of privacy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was trying to make me the bad guy, trying to spin it like I was the one who did something wrong. Are you serious? I yelled. You've been cheating on me, using our money, and you're mad at me for finding out. How long has this been going on? Jessica's face contorted into something ugly, as if she'd finally dropped the mask she'd been wearing. What does it matter? Maybe if you weren't so boring and predictable, I wouldn't have to find excitement elsewhere. Her words cut deeper than anything else she could have said. It felt like she wanted to hurt me as much as possible, like she wanted to make me suffer for what she had already done to me. At that moment, I felt like there was no hope for our marriage. I didn't feel any remorse or apology from her. She was just being cruel. After Jessica said those mean things, I felt like my world had ended. My world had shattered, and I was left in the rubble of a marriage I thought was real. The woman I'd loved and trusted for so long had torn me apart like I was nothing. I couldn't understand it. I stood there, stunned, as she stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door behind her. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. My heart was pounding. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, and sadness, and I was overwhelmed. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall, trying to understand what had happened. How could she do this to me and to us? I thought about the last year, looking for clues or signs that might have warned me. But it was like looking at a different life. I felt like a fool. I had been blindsided by the person I thought I knew better than anyone. Every memory we shared now felt tainted. It was like I was rewatching a movie with a twisted ending I hadn't seen coming. The late nights at work, the mysterious outings with friends, the sudden distance between us all made sense now. She had lied to me, used me, and I hadn't seen it because I hadn't wanted to. I told myself we were just going through a rough patch. But the truth was so much worse. And then there was the anger. I was angry at her for what she'd done. But I was also angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for letting it get this far. How could I have been so blind? I wanted to scream, to destroy something, but all I could do was sit there and feel like my whole life had just gone up in flames. But underneath all the anger and pain, there was this deep, crushing sadness that I felt like I'd lost not only my wife, but my best friend, my partner, the person I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. This realization hit me harder than anything else. The future she imagined, the life we were supposed to build together, it was all gone now. It was just a cruel joke. I spent hours on the couch, my mind going in circles. Jessica stayed locked in the bedroom, probably hoping I'd just calm down and things would go away. But I knew there was no going back to the way things were. The trust was broken. The person I thought I'd spend my life with had turned out to be a stranger. Finally, I forced myself to stand up. I needed to think clearly to figure out what to do next. I walked around the house trying to clear my head, but everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of what we used to have. Photos of us on vacations, the furniture we picked out together, even the stupid little decorations Jessica insisted on buying for every holiday. It was all tainted now, reminders of a life that had been nothing but a lie. But then I remembered the messages, the money she'd spent on her affair. I had to protect myself to make sure she couldn't take any more from me. I grabbed my laptop and logged into our bank accounts to check the transactions. It was clear as day. There were withdrawals, expensive restaurant charges, hotel bookings, and thousands of dollars gone. It was all funneled into her secret life with Matt. That's when I snapped. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She had used me, lied to me, and now she was going to pay. I transferred every cent from our joint accounts into my own. I made sure she couldn't touch a dime. Then I gathered all the evidence, bank statements, text messages, photos, and saved it all on a hard drive. If she tried to fight me on anything, I'd be ready. But I wasn't done yet. I had to hit her where it hurt. I didn't care about the money or the things she'd bought with it, but I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions. I knew Matt worked at a local store, so I called the police anonymously and reported him for theft. It wasn't entirely true, but he had spent money that wasn't his. And I wanted him to suffer as much as I did. Finally, I contacted an attorney that I needed to get the divorce papers in order quickly, that I didn't want to spend another minute tied to Jessica, and I wanted her to know I wasn't messing around. This wasn't just a rough patch. It was over. I wanted her to know that. When I finished, it was late and I was exhausted, but I felt calm. I had been blindsided and betrayed, but now I was back in control. I knew what to do next, and I wasn't going to let Jessica or Matt drag me down any further. They had made their choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. The next morning, I woke up feeling drained, as if I hadn't slept at all. But the anger that had fueled me the night before was still there. Simmering just below the surface, I knew what I had to do next, and I wasn't going to waste any more time. I called Jessica from the bedroom. She came into the living room with the same defensive look on her face as before, as if she was ready to continue the argument from the night before. But I wasn't interested in arguing. I was done talking that I handed her the divorce papers without a word. The look on her face was priceless. Her eyes went wide, and for a moment, she just stared at the papers as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, her voice rising in panic. "It's over, Jessica," I said, my voice calm. "You made your choices, and now you're going to live with them. I've already used up all our money, so don't even think about taking more from me. And as for your friend, he's about to get a visit from the police." Her face twisted in anger, and she started to say something, but I cut her off. "Don't even try to turn this around on me. You've been lying, cheating, and using me for months. I'm done playing the fool. You wanted excitement? Well, here it is. Get out of my house." She looked like she was about to explode, her eyes burning with a mixture of anger and fear. "You can't do this," she screamed. "You're overreacting. We can work this out." But I just shook my head. "There's nothing left for us to work out. You destroyed everything we had the moment you brought him into our lives. Now go away. I'm done." For a moment I thought she was going to attack me, but instead, she just stood there, shaking with anger and disbelief. Finally, she turned on her heel and stormed back into the bedroom to start packing. I watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. That I had won, but it didn't feel like victory. All I felt was a deep sense of loss, as if I had cut a piece of myself out to get rid of her. But I knew it had to be done. There was no going back from what she had done, and no way to rebuild the trust she had broken. As I listened to her throw her things into a suitcase, I felt a strange sense of calm come over me. The hardest part was over. That I had taken control of the situation, and now all I had to do was see it through to the end. Soon she'd be gone, and I could start figuring out how to get on with my life without her, without the lies, without the betrayal. After Jessica stormed off to pack, I sat on the couch and tried to process everything. I could hear her slamming drawers and throwing clothes into her suitcase. I could feel the anger in her movements, but I didn't care anymore. She was finally getting what she deserved. When she came back into the living room, her suitcase was full, and she looked angry. "You're really going to do this?" she said angrily. "Throw away everything we have." I looked into her eyes and felt nothing but cold determination. "You threw it all away the moment you started lying to me," I said calmly. "There's nothing left to save." She huffed in frustration and dragged her suitcase to the front door. But as she was about to leave, I couldn't resist one last comment to hurt her more. "Oh, and Jessica," I called out, making her stop. "You might want to tell Matt to watch his back. The police should be knocking on his door any minute." Her hand froze on the doorknob, and she slowly turned to look at me. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of shock and fear. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice shaking. For the first time since this all started, I smiled. It was a cold, satisfied smile that probably looked as twisted as I felt. I reported him for stealing. "You two have been spending our money like it was your own little piggy bank. Let's see how he enjoys the excitement of dealing with the cops." She looked like she was going to argue, like she was going to try to defend him or herself, but then she just shook her head and muttered something under her breath that I couldn't quite make out. Without another word, she yanked the door open and dragged her suitcase out, slamming the door behind her with a final, resounding thud. Once she was gone, I felt a strange sense of relief. The house was quiet and empty, but it didn't feel like a loss anymore. It felt like I had just taken out the garbage. She and Matt had tricked me, but now the tables had turned and I could only imagine the chaos that was about to unfold in their little world, the perfect storm that I had set in motion. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction knowing that they would have to deal with the mess they had made, worry about the police report, and realize that they had lost everything. They had underestimated me, thinking I would just let them walk all over me, but they were wrong that I wasn't the passive, clueless husband they thought I was. I would hit back, and I would hit back hard. Now that Jessica was gone, I could finally begin to pick up the pieces of my life. The wreckage of our marriage was still there, but it didn't seem so daunting anymore that I had made my stand, and now it was time to rebuild. After Jessica walked out the door, I sat in the silence of the house, trying to absorb everything that had just happened. The weight of it all hit me in waves. First relief, then exhaustion, then a deep sadness. I was finally free of her lies and betrayal, but I was also alone. The life we had built together was gone, and all that was left were memories that felt more like wounds. I spent the next few days in a strange fog, going through the motions of life but not really feeling present. I called off work because I needed time to process everything. But staying home just meant more time to think, to relive every painful detail of what I'd uncovered. It was hard to focus on anything but the hurt, the anger, and the sadness that kept creeping in. But I knew I couldn't stay in that place forever, that I had to move forward and start rebuilding my life without Jessica, so I started the divorce process, making sure all the legal aspects were covered so she couldn't try to come back and take more from me. I also started cleaning out my house, getting rid of anything that reminded me of her. It was painful but necessary that I packed up every photo, every gift, every piece of clothing she'd left behind, and either threw it away or donated it. The house felt emptier without her things, but it also felt lighter, like I was slowly reclaiming my space, making it mine again. But it wasn't just about getting rid of the physical reminders. I had to work on myself too. I started talking to friends and family. I had distanced myself from these people over the past year while trying to make things work with Jessica. It was hard to admit what had happened and to tell them how blind I'd been. But their support meant more than I could have imagined. They reminded me that I wasn't alone and that I still had people who cared about me. Even if Jessica didn't, I also decided to seek therapy. I was overwhelmed by my emotions. Anger, grief, and self-doubt. It was difficult to confide in a stranger, but I knew I needed help. I didn't want to feel this way forever. I wanted to heal and trust again, even if it felt impossible. Little by little, I started to feel more like myself. I wasn't as angry, and I wasn't as sad. I started to focus on the things I enjoyed, the hobbies I'd neglected, and the friends I'd lost touch with. It wasn't a quick process, and I knew it would take time. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. After a few months, I started to feel less angry and more in control. I started to enjoy things I had stopped doing, and I reconnected with friends. It took time, but I felt like I was improving. I felt more at home, and I made new memories. I felt more independent. The divorce was easy because Jessica didn't try to fight it. I heard that Matt had some problems with the police and lost his job because of the theft report, but I didn't feel bad about it. They both got what they deserved, and I was finally able to close that chapter of my life. The therapy helped more than I expected. It wasn't just about getting over Jessica. It was about rebuilding myself, understanding why I let things get as far as they did, and learning how to set boundaries and trust again. I'm not going to lie and say that I'm completely over it or that the scars don't still hurt from time to time. But I'm stronger now, wiser, and I'm ready to move forward with my life, free from the shadows of the past. I've started going out more, reconnecting with old friends and even making new ones, but I'm not rushing into anything romantic. Trust is still hard for me, but I'm open to finding someone who deserves my trust and love. For now, I'm focusing on myself, on becoming the best version of myself, and that's enough. I've learned a lot from this experience, especially to trust my instincts, never let others make me question my self-worth, and to stand up for myself, even when it's painful. Life throws challenges our way, but how we handle them defines us. Thank you to everyone who has read this and offered support and advice. Your words mean more than you realize to anyone facing similar challenges. Remember, you're stronger than you think. This journey is tough, but you'll make it through. You'll get to the other side. Goodbye for now.